music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Blanch, Kelly, get caught in the play. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steampunk Kelly with the sand clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hello. Happy, what day of the week is it? Wednesday. Wow. We're already Wednesday. How do we get to Wednesday so fast? But here we are. It's a Wednesday. And Todd Blanch testified before the Senate today for his little confirmation hearing, which I hope it's more like a confirmation hearing. I don't think there were any revelations. I don't think there were any big moments. It was more or less what I expected. Todd Blanch sitting there gaslighting while he's under oath, and the Republicans in the Senate pretend he's not gaslighting while he's under oath. He is now and always will be Donald Trump's personal attorney before he is anything else. And he is committed to protecting Donald Trump more than he is protecting this country and its laws. He doesn't seem to. He tried to talk around the whole. I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched part of it and just it. You know, these hearings are so useless to me because nobody ever like they're useless. The senators use them to get their sound bites, and I mean that from both sides. And the person doing the confirming tries his best to not, or her best to not actually answer the questions. There's never like a hearing. Like you would think that with a hearing, the thing that people would do would be like hear, right? But nobody hears anything. Everybody has all their statements. The whether they're asking the questions or whether they're answering the questions, they have everything that they're going to say before anything starts. So it should just be called a yellings, because all it is people yelling at each other. Nobody listens to anything. Calling it a hearing, it just sort of silly. So anyway, so I watched that a little bit, and we can go ahead and talk about that and get your takes on it. But this whole thing, to me, he's disqualified just based on the whole, on two things. One, his complete inaction on the Epstein files. I know there was some stuff about that came up, and he's basically trying to say both that he's going to prosecute anybody that he can, and then, but there's nobody to prosecute. It's like, which is it? And why are all these names redacted? And it's like, just stop with the gaslighting. How can you gaslight under oath? Isn't that like a crime that like your predecessor tried to prosecute people for? It's called like perjury or something. Hi, Brett. How you doing this morning or this afternoon? At one point, Todd Blanch stated that he was Trump's lawyer. He literally said he was Trump's lawyer. And then he bagged and said he was his lawyer. Yeah. Well, and this is like an actual thing. It's not just with Todd Blanch and Donald Trump, but, you know, kind of once somebody's lawyer, always somebody lawyer. Once they stop becoming your client, confidentiality doesn't stop applying. But he acts like he's, as Attorney General, serving as Trump's lawyer and not as the lawyer of the people of the United States. So Donald Dusty seems to agree that the yellings would be a better nomenclature for these sorts of things that occurred. Now, I didn't see any actual yelling in this one, to be fair, but they just talked past each other and they asked questions, and then Todd Blanch answered it, and neither side seemed to pay any attention at all to what the answers were. And Todd Blanch didn't really seem to pay any attention at all to what the questions were. Okay, let's go. Gamers has a question. I will try to answer your question as best I can. What is your question? Jay says N. Oh. Yeah. We're just going to block him before he gets done with that. Why do people have to do things like that? Like, why do you have to come on a channel and just spew racist words? Like, what do you think that serves? What purpose? What is the point of doing that? Just to you might as well just go and say, my mother was a terrible human being and she failed me miserably, or my mother was a great person and I failed her miserably. One of the two is true. Either you're failing her or she failed you. Which is it? When you type racist stuff like that, you're a terrible human being. So is it your fault or is it your mom's fault? Did she raise you right or did she raise you wrong? This is not allowed on my channel. I don't want to hear any nonsense about how I'm censoring him because I blocked him. Home watching Falklands War Redux. England versus Argentina on. Oh, cool. England's doing pretty well. I guess both England and Argentina are doing pretty well. It's to the semis now? I was kind of into it while the U.S. was into it, and I haven't watched a game since. What can I say? I'm an American. I have never seen a bot do the soft A before. Yeah, I don't know if it's a bot or maybe Jay is just a jerk. Maybe he's just an actual human being who was raised to be a hateful, spiteful little worm. And maybe his mom is a hateful, spiteful little worm, and that's why she raised him that way. Or maybe his mom is a great person who raised him not to be a hateful, spiteful little worm, but he decided he was going to become a hateful, spiteful little worm on his own. Either way, he is a hateful, spiteful little worm. It's just whether it's his fault or his mom's fault. I don't know. Remember, it's all of our first times being alive. First time, yes. Thank you. That is unless you believe in reincarnation, that is a factual statement. Hi, Secret Superstar. How are you doing? Just so you know, let's go, gamers. I have not forgotten you. Still waiting for your question. Sarah here from Pakistan. Oh. If you're going to take Stan to another country in a suitcase, it'd be Pakistan, because you just Pakistan. Sorry. I'm Buddhist, and even I want England to win. I don't I don't understand the connection between Buddhism and Argentina or England or whatever. That's kind of funny. What's the content? Well, we're talking about Todd Blanch. Like, the plan was to talk about the Todd Blanch hearing, but there was just so little revelatory that came out of that it's kind of like, I'm not sure. I've got some ideas about something else that I'll talk about in a minute regarding trans people and this whole women deserve their safe places dogma. We are all capable of being hateful. I am capable of being a hypocrite, or of being hateful. I've never said I'm not, but I am not hateful. I choose to not be hateful. I choose to be better. So I'm not being a hypocrite. Um, I was born in Louisiana. I could very easily be racist, but you know what? My parents raised me not to be, and I don't think that being racist is good. I don't think I'm a hypocrite because I criticize racists for coming on my stream and typing racist stuff. That doesn't make me a hypocrite. It makes me a human being. YouTube seems to attract jerks. Fun facts: Pakistan is an acronym. I did not know that. Iowa is an acronym. Did you know Iowa is an acronym? It's an acronym for idiots out walking around. What is Pakistan an acronym for? Hello from Norway. Hi Norway. Tom Rudd. How you doing today? Sarah App Kia Kaito. Oh, so I don't know what is that a different language or it better not be racist. You can't judge people from nationality. No, we can't. We can't at all. I know a lot of people, and I know good and bad people from lots of different countries, lots of different ethnicities. And I don't use that word. I had a guy one time ask me, how come they can use the N-word and we can't? And I was just like, why do you want to? Like, what do you mean we can't? That means you want to, but you can't? It's like asking, how come I can't drink water out of the toilet? How come my dog can drink water out of the toilet and I can't? What about men's safe places? I'm the garage. I don't know what's the garage. Jason Winkler. Any relation to Henry? Can you get me an in? If you can get me an in with your Uncle Hank, that would be cool. Henry Winkler is one of the he is like when I was a kid, I grew up watching Happy Days and the Fonz was like everything. Like he was the epitome of cool. And now it's like Henry Winkler, like all his roles are, kind of the opposite of the Fonz. It's kind of funny. But I've noticed there's like this slate of people like Henry Winkler and Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill that are doing these roles that are just completely different from anything they've done before. And some of their best acting is actually done, as senior citizens. If you haven't seen The Long Walk, watch The Long Walk. I was almost done with that show. Mark Hamill is in it, and his character is just he plays such a despisable character. He's like the role is a terrible person in that movie, and you're just like, oh, I just hate that guy. And then so I like, who is that anyway? Because I was like nagging at me that he looks familiar. And my wife probably would have picked it up in like 3 minutes or 3 seconds. She's good at that. I'm not. I have that. I think I have a little bit of that whole face blindness thing. But anyway, he looked familiar, and I was trying to identify him, and it was just he's so different from like Luke Skywalker in that movie. So I looked it up, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's Mark Hamill. So anyway, if you haven't seen The Long Walk, it's worth the watch, especially if you liked, old school Stephen King books. That was always my favorite Stephen King book growing up. Zesty vibes, maxed out, final boss type-ish. Cool. University of North Carolina. I don't know. Nope. He's not related to Hank. Oh well. You gotta shoot your shots when you get them. This Trump's third or fourth pick for AG if he's going to pick a personal lawyer. Why doesn't he pick somebody like Dershowitz or Giuliani? Well, Giuliani can't practice law anymore. Dershowitz, oh my goodness, yeah, that would really calm everybody down on the whole Epstein files thing. I don't know anything about Todd Blanch's actual law practice prior to Trump. What I do know is now he is disbarred from practicing law in New York City and potentially soon DC. I don't know how you have an attorney general who can't practice law in the largest city in the country and the capital city. Like, that just seems kind of a non-starter to me. Can you imagine, like, you think about, like, you ever heard the joke, what do you call a busload of lawyers going off the cliff with one empty seat? You know, a crying shame. That one seat was empty. Like, lawyers are not the most respected profession in the country. You know, like, they make money and stuff, but we don't usually think of the high moral fiber it takes to be a lawyer. They're kind of the joke. And so can you imagine being so corrupt that, like, a group of lawyers sit around and say, you look, there's corrupt and then there's Todd Blanch. Like, so he is there. The reason he is there is to protect Donald Trump. He is not there because he's a great lawyer. He's still Trump's defense attorney. Sorry, but that's the only nation can't convince me on earth. I'm not sure what you mean. Pardon me if anyone mind. It's my opinion. Oh, you're entitled to your opinion. Henry is funny. Oh, are you talking about Argentina? Is there something between Argentina and Pakistan that I don't know about? Happy birthday to Harrison Ford this week. Yesterday, I think. Oh, if you guys haven't watched the show with Shrinking on Apple TV, that is definitely a show worth watching. You really need to watch Shrinking. It is a fantastic show. He plays a psychiatrist that gets Parkinson's, and he's just very, very funny in it. Like, I know I just said Harrison Ford is very, very funny in it, and that's not what you expect to hear about Harrison Ford, but he's hilarious. Harrison Ford is pretty damn good in 1923 is a show I've been watching. And then another show that Mark Hamill was in is the Usher on Netflix. It's a TV series based on the fall of the House of Usher. And he's really, really good in that too. And then Henry Winkler, watch him in Barry. He's fantastic in Barry. And he's kind of the polar opposite of the Fonz. And then, you know, like Jane Curtin and Everything Everywhere All at Once. So all these actors that were like in their prime when I was a kid now, and they're all older and they're doing some of their best work. Thank you. Good vibes. Positive. Thank you, Marcel. We need more public service lawyers. You know who, like, what's his name? Mark Stein? No. The lawyer. Mark Elias. That's what I'm thinking of. Mark Elias is an American hero. If you have money to subscribe to his thing, then subscribe to his thing. He deserves some support, and, you know, like, donate money if you don't want to subscribe or whatever. But he is the one man that is basically single-handedly fighting against the entire DOJ to keep America free. Speaking of which, this is something I wanted to bring up today. So Donald Trump has been lately going on and on about. Sorry, gotta wet my throat. Donald Trump has been going on and on about communism lately, and how like, there's these communists. The Democrats are communists now. We're not. He just keeps saying we're communists because there's these DSA people that won their primaries, and DSA is not communist. And they're like sitting there calling us hammer and sickle stuff and all of this nonsense. Even the DSA, is not communist, like Soviet style communist. The whole democratic part means that whatever change they make, they want to make it through democratic means. So that's one huge difference. The other difference is they're not for abandoning all private property. They're just for some public ownership, not all public ownership. Like you'd still have your own car, your own house, you could still run your own business, but some things are better run by the public. So like things like airports and roads and public utilities and stuff like that. So we got an England fan here. What's the score? Anybody want to give me an update date on the score? Or are they playing right? They're playing right now, right? Private lawyers, while necessary, can be so hard into preying on logical fallacies to win. That's life. Yeah. I almost think that some of them learn logic for the purpose of exploiting fallacies. There's some things that Todd Blanch was saying where you could like, it's technically true, but it's like telling the truth to provide somebody with misleading information. How's Kitty? Kitty is doing well. She's got a thing on Substack now that's doing well, and it's just taken a lot of her time. She's also got, her career going on, so she just got a lot going on. She pops on still every now and then. Let's go England. Is that like a combination of England and Ireland or something? What is the angriest country in the world? Ireland. Ireland? Okay. Anyway. Yeah, it's like he's stuck in the 1980s. DSA is the epitome of democratic socialism. Yes. And you get some people that are like that try to make it sound like there's this vast uncrossable distance between democratic socialism and social democracy. But if you go and you look at the actual policies on DSA, they talk about, that they're for the public ownership of some things, but through democratic means. And so they quote that part of it to make it seem like they're advocating for, Chinese style communism, which that's not even that anymore. But you don't have a wealth tax if you don't have wealth. And one of the big things in the DSA is a wealth tax. You can't have wealth if you don't have private ownership. So this notion that the DSA is for against private ownership sort of is ridiculous. Bringing back the Red Scare. I never thought I would see that come back around again. Oh, so this is, I lost my train of thought. So here's what's happening is he's been going around talking about how communism, is rising up in the Democrats, and the Democrats are communists. And keeps trying to tie these things together, and he's been saying we're the enemy of the people and all of this stuff all this time. And by Democrats, I mean anybody that doesn't do what he wants. Like he tends to really us and them. There's people that support him and there are people that don't support him. And then he will use these general terms like Marxist or communist or Democrat or leftist or, and MAGAs all do this, right? It's just like anybody that disagrees with them is all of these things, and Antifa, and, we're all terrorists and stuff. It's all this big jumble of, I had the audacity to disagree with you. So, you just have to, throw out all these words that you don't understand. It's like when they talk about, like a communist Marxist or something, or a communist, they talk about the Islamic communists as though those two things aren't mutually exclusive, the Islamic, Sharia law extremist and the communist doesn't like religion at all. Like somehow these two people got together just to oppose Trump. They're all so dumb. Anyway, he's been going around talking about the communism. And now yesterday, Mike Johnson said he asked for $350 million to combat, in part, I think, not all 350 million, but to combat communism inside our borders on the defense budget. So what does that mean? Is he going to start using the military? Is he trying to get authorization of military use and funding for military use against American citizens? If he's calling the Democrats communists, and then he's saying that the communists are, in our shore are a danger that needs to be fought, and he's asking for it in the defense budget, 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. Like, at some point, you got to say, this is starting to sound a lot like fascism. And that was about 10 years ago. But now it's like the whole poem starts, first they came for the communists. And he is literally coming for the communists. So maybe he's a fascist. Maybe that is not just me saying things. And maybe I'm the one that understands what fascism is, and that's why I'm saying it, because I've read history books. I know what the patterns are. Read The Mothers of the Disappeared. Fascism has a history, and he's repeating it. It's almost like he's studied it. It's the one thing he knows about, how to pull off a fascist heist, in my opinion. Okay. Oh, DSA is the epitome of democratic socialism, in my opinion. Yeah. 35 minutes in, still no score. Definitely, I'd agree on them learning just to be exploitive of it, like dark psychology. The Republican or the lawyers that use fallacies. Wowza. 5.42 plus tip for a slice of pizza. 542. Is that good or bad? That seems like a lot. I don't know where you're at, but that seems kind of high. I have now, it's almost a year and a half since I've ordered pizza, so I don't know what the prices are like now. I just make my own pizza now. I know I talk about it all the time, like with fresh milled flour and stuff. But man, pizza crust on fresh milled flour is just like your life will never be the same. It's so much better. Don't lie, you're a bunch of Marxists. Okay, first of all, it's your YOU''RE. Welcome to the channel, Randall. I'd like to tell you about our war on apostrophes. We want to bring back apostrophes. We want to make apostrophes great again. So YOU''RE, join our fight to defend apostrophes. You're a bunch of Marxists. Well, Marxist would be a plural there. Not how do you have a bunch of a singular thing? And third, what is a Marxist? Define Marxism. Who's a Marxist? What's the difference between a what makes me a Marxist? Tell me, what makes me a Marxist? We'll just talk about me. How am I a Marxist? Socialism is the answer. I would say some socialism is part of the answer, is my opinion. I don't think that, I think that we still need some private ownership of, like, your own home, your own car, and things like that. But I think that the government does a lot of things better, like healthcare insurance and running the military. I don't want a privately owned military. I think that public utilities should be public. I think I honestly, you want to hear something outlandish? I think that gas or that electricity and heat and stuff like that should be free. Not free, but tax funded. And I think, you want to pay more taxes for that, then that's fine. But wouldn't that make a world of difference? Isn't that better than shutting off people's heat because they're poor? Like rationing heat based on income, in the middle of a winter, or rationing air conditioning in the middle of the summer, that to me seems like the extreme position. Like we have it all backwards. We think that this mine, that's my money, mine. That selfishness is the answer to everything. I think we need to raise the floor, not lower the ceiling. I think that if everybody has the basic minimums, then everyone will have more. One slice? I hope it was a good slice. More defection euphoria. Defmo. I don't know who defecated. Dumbass, we are Marxists. The Democrats are not. Okay. I think you're talking to the person that called me a Marxist. Conservatives don't know the difference. And there are Marxists, right? I don't know who the we is here, but I'm assuming that Ace is Marxist if Ace identifies as Marxist. But I think like the whole labeling thing to me has gotten so confusing. Like two people can say they're leftist and mean entirely different things by it. But I'd love to hear your thought. Like, what is your view of a Marxist, Ace, and why do you say you're a Marxist? And who is the we? Yes, one slice of pizza. Man, I hope it was a good pizza. My pizza's better though. Cancel each other out. You can't even pay with. Oh, and that's not even including the tip. And you got a tip before you get the. What a weird. Is that like a Trump restaurant or something? No, I know you wouldn't eat there. I still don't have a good explanation why we have an occupation of Washington, D.C. a year plus later. Oh, the National Guard? Because Donald Trump is Donald Trump. I was thinking of this today. We talk about Make America Great Again and all that. Well, we don't. They do. And I just think how much Republican philosophy, how much Republican politics, everything is based on fear. Have you ever thought about this? I'm sure you have. At least some people have. Everything is about fear. Fear of immigrants. Oh, they're invading us. They're coming over the border. They're going to take our jobs. They're going to rape our women and murder us and blah, blah, blah. The immigrants, right? And then, it's the communists are coming and the communists are going to take our homes. You see these racist stuff about, black on white crime that don't understand how numbers work or anything. Black people are going to kill them. If the immigrants don't get to them, the black people will. And the black people only have jobs because they're DEI hires. And you can't even fly a plane on because you might get a black pilot that doesn't know how to fly one, but he got a job because he's black. They just go on and on. Every single talking point is fear-based. Everything is. Somebody's going to take my tax dollars and feed the children with it. Why do I have to feed children with my tax dollars? Why do you have to take my money? They're afraid of losing their money. They're afraid of losing their wives. They're afraid of losing their country. They're just always afraid. And yet they're like this, supposed to be these toxic masculinity. The real men. You know what? Real men don't cower at the idea of children crossing a border. You want to be a toxic man, defend the children. Or you know what? You want to be a real man? Real men defend children. Real men don't defend pedophiles. And real men don't defend the people that defend pedophiles. You talk about masculinity. Masculinity doesn't mean that you beat your wife. Masculinity means you listen to her. You have the courage to listen to your wife. MAGAs. It's a bunch of cowards, is what they are. A bunch of spineless little jellyfish. MAGA couldn't tell you what the ideologies of communism or socialism are. They just repeat the leader's words with no understanding. And you start getting into the nuances of, like the difference between communism, the way it's practiced in China, versus the communism the way it's practiced in the USR, or at least it was, versus communism the way that Marx meant it, versus what is Marxism, versus what is socialism, versus what is democratic socialism. And then you throw in leftist. What is a leftist? I don't even know what a leftist is anymore. Versus a liberal. What is a liberal? Like, people use these terms all the time. And this is one of the, and then on the right, you've got, all these splinter groups going on, like you got the Candace Owens group, and you got the Ben Shapiro group, and you got the Tucker Carlson group, and they've all got their own little splinters going on. And this is why I say on this show again, over and over again, I really wish we could just talk about issues and how to resolve issues. Because it doesn't do anybody any good to sit there and just label everybody all day. I don't know if that's what tribalism is, another word that gets thrown around, but tribalism is always what people use to describe what other people do, and they're never the tribalists. Like, MAGAs are the most tribalist of all. They have a uniform, and they complain about tribalism. So yeah, great comment, Tom. Thank you. Sometimes I think I come across as angry reading good remarks, but that's because you tapped into a core frustration that I had. They'll understand what those words mean as far as they're concerned. They just catchphrases and name calling. And so much of what MAGA does is that they have I tried all week last week and so far all week this week just to have a real conversation with one MAGA. I tried it on this channel. I tried it on Facebook. And I've been trying it for, like the whole 2 years that I've been doing all this stuff. And it's just so hard. I've had maybe 2 or 3 actual honest conversations. And then I'll get the ones that come on. They'll be like, be ready to have an honest conversation. And then they don't. They'll just, what do you want to talk about? I'll say, okay, let's talk about election integrity. And I think election integrity means that everybody should be able to vote, but only Americans should be able to vote. And they'll be like, what about voter ID? And it's like, no, now you're just trying to talk about your pet issue. You're not trying your pet talking point. I'm in Little Italy. In New York or Chicago? If you're in Little Italy in Chicago, that's my old stomping grounds. Prices are going up, though. The lowest tip you can pay at the counter is 15%. There is no chance of 0. Wow. And that's at the counter. Wow, you lived in a fascist country? I have. Spain under Franco. Yeah. We went through all that already. Yeah, you're living in Spain in 1980 when you were a little kid does not make you an expert on fascism. Like, it does not mean that you have the totality of all experience of fascism. There are people that lived in Germany in the 1940s that tell me that you are wrong. So you can just, you're entitled to your opinion. You're entitled to your experience. You are just not the totality of all experience about fascism. Franco, at the end of his life, and the few years of transition after, does not make you the single expert on fascism. I'll take Orwell's word over yours. You mean like, okay, we are, if people are being denied heat because they don't have money, how is that not rationing heat? How is that not rationing health insurance or electricity for air conditioning? You're just using the word rationing for a different way of rationing. You're using rationing to mean that there's only, you know what, Robert? I live in Texas. We can agree that Texas is not a communist state, right? But Texas, well, if you are using too much air conditioning and you have your thermostat connected to your Wi-Fi, they will actually adjust your thermostat for you. Is that rationing? Yeah. Rationing means if people aren't able to get heat, it's rationed. The means of choosing who to ration it to is the only thing that's different. France isn't socialist. France is a social democracy. Yeah, I don't think so. So I think that Robert just likes to instigate things. He doesn't really want to have an honest conversation. If Trump could do drone strikes on his opposition, he would. I mean, he asked for funding to combat communists after calling his political opposition communists. That's fascist. I don't care, Robert, if you don't think it's fascist. Everybody else on the planet knows what fascism is when it comes to that. Yeah, Walter, yeah, I kind of already did that with the AI video of pooping on American public. Remember? That was probably just, yeah. Then it was just cartoon poops. How long before it's actual bombs? AKA President Snow. We already have is that from the Hunger Games? We already have socialism for black people at the expense of people who pay taxes at a higher cost, which tends to be white people. We do this. This is, I suppose you're one of those people that gets offended when I call you a racist, but that's a racist comment. Black people have jobs and you complain they have DEI. And then if black people don't have jobs, then you complain that they get welfare. All of which is just nonsense. Did you know? Here's a fact for you. The rural America has more social welfare programs per capita, like Medicaid, like SNAP benefits and stuff like that per capita than urban counties. White people are on welfare too, but with them, they life dealt them tough breaks, right? But with black people, to you, it's because they're too lazy. Pizza in Naples is unmatched. Go to the Spanish Quarter and get the world's best pizza and a cold beer for €8. I have to agree with that. Believe it or not, I when I was in the Air Force, I was stationed in Italy, and I was admin, and I took care of like medevacs and one of the things that we would do is we'd send people to the Naples hospital. Is the nearest large major hospital, and we'd take them there about once a week, I think it was, on Wednesdays. And so I would travel with them to sort everything out. And so I've been to Naples many, many times and had many, many, many pizzas there. And the fun thing about Italy, a lot of people don't know this, is like they don't eat like pizza like this in Italy. Every region of Italy has its own sort of spin on pizza, sort of like what we do here with Chicago pizza and Detroit pizza and New York pizza. Everybody's got the California pizza where it's like the kind of pizza nobody ever wants to eat. But you've got different versions of pizza. But Naples pizza is really good. Where I was at in San Vito, it's like how there's like Italy's like a boot. The top of the boot, the top of the heel of the boot is where I lived. And they have a really, really unique kind of crust for their pizza, and they actually make it with potato. They have a potato in the dough. And it has flour in it too, but it's also got potato, and that's what makes it so unique. It's like potato bread crust almost. If you've ever had potato bread, potato has some stuff that makes bread softer. Anyway, I'm rambling. Benefits and taxes are not based on your race. We all pay, and you are all eligible. Thank you. Why people have to come on and say this ridiculous nonsense? And then they'll also say we don't have systemic racism, right? Like, oh, black people are poor and we have to pay them more money. And then you're like, okay, so you think we should do something about systemic racism? We don't have systemic racism. So why do you think black people are poor? Because they're just inferior? Is that what you're arguing? Because if so, then that makes you a racist. No, why are you calling me a racist? Well, because you're like identifying as racist without using that word. That's why. And then you get all mad when I call you a fascist and a racist and wonder maybe if, like you are secretly cheering on Hitler. Based on the stats, black people pay less tax due to them being poor on average. I'm not even, but that's systemic racism, right? They don't pay less taxes because they're black. They pay less taxes because they make less money. The fact they make less money is due to systemic racism, which is why we need to alleviate systemic racism and make it so that black people can make more money and move out of poverty. And I think it's like we embellish so it's 18.4%. Only 18.4% of black Americans live in poverty, right? We make it sound like all black Americans live in poverty, but it's less than 1 in 5. But black Americans are more likely to be impoverished than white Americans. And there's a whole list of reasons for that. And you can't just ignore those reasons. Those reasons are what we call systemic racism. When we say systemic racism or institutional racism, we're not talking about somebody that deliberately is doing things to make that happen anymore. It's just the impact, the whole impact. You ever have like a bunch of wires and cables and stuff like that and throw them into a bucket, like a big tub? I have this big plastic tub that they all go into. And then one day I thought, okay, well, it's time to organize all this stuff. So I started pulling them out, and they had somehow managed to all wrap themselves around each other. And so, like you pull one cable and you pull the whole box up. That's institutional racism. Every aspect of institutional racism is intertwined with all the other aspects of institutional racism. So there's, black people are less likely to graduate from college, and then they drop out, but that's because they have to work more. Like their parents don't have the wealth to put them through. It's larger issue that needs to be addressed instead of using institutional racism to justify ongoing racism. Last time I checked, Oprah was not poor. Beyonce was not poor. Even Bill Cosby is not poor. And all kinds of black people have regular middle-class jobs too. Like, again, 82% of black people in America are not poor. Disparage groups of people while prompting yourself up as accepting. No, I'm not. I think what you're doing is you're conflating demeaning a group of people that have an immutable characteristic like skin color and denigrating a group of people that are assholes, that behave like assholes because they think like assholes and they act like assholes. And if I call assholes assholes, that doesn't make me judgmental of assholes. It just makes me observant that that's asshole behavior. There is a big difference between an immutable characteristic and a choice. Being a MAGA is a choice. And if you choose to be an asshole, I will call you an asshole. 61% of black Americans. This is not a correct statistic. I just looked it up. 18.3%. Look at, so now we're back to TDS. Yeah. TDS, like, see, this is what I mean when I talk about assholes. Like, that's just an asshole response. Don't be an asshole. Be better. You don't have to be. That's a choice to sit there and exclaim that somebody has TDS, this fake disease that is made up to just diminish the fact that Donald Trump is a 34-time felon, that Donald Trump is an adjudicated rapist, that Donald Trump is started a war with Iran where school of girls was bombed and hundreds of children are dead, that Donald Trump chose to raise tariffs on Penguin Island, that Donald Trump has gone after all of his political opponents because he felt like he was being persecuted just because he did things like try to overthrow the country and tried to do things like steal nuclear secrets and say, I declassified them with my mind. All right. TDS is a way to avoid having an honest conversation. There's no such thing as Trump derangement syndrome. There's only something that I call MAGA Tourette's, where you just spew MAGA blatherings like TDS when confronted with an actual substantive topic. TDS is not real. TDS is cowardice. Yelling TDS is just a cowardly thing that cowards do when they're afraid of actual knowledge penetrating through that MAGA hat and actually taking root. The programs are available to everyone who require them. Yes. You can't discuss issues while calling people MAGAs. I never call people maggots. I've never used the word maggots. I say MAGAs. And that's because that is what MAGAs identify. I've even asked Walter, ask Brett. When people use the word maggots on my show, I say I do not dehumanize people. I will not dehumanize people. I've never called anybody a maggot. I have called people MAGAs because that's what they call themselves. I use the term which you choose to use as MAGAs. And I don't wonder why there isn't civility. I know why there isn't civility, because MAGAs have none. They came on, you had some guy come on here and drop the N-word and then leave. You have people come on here making racist comments, and so I call them racist because that's what they are. That doesn't make me uncivil. Stop being a coward. Own what you are. If you're going to be a racist and you're going to say racist stuff, just admit you're a racist. At least be an honest racist instead of a coward racist. How come socialism works in European nations but not in African nations? What African nations does it not work in? Like, this is one of those things where people actually need to learn history. All right. What happened in Africa was this thing called colonialism. All right. And I know you're going to be, oh, he's talking about colonialism. I used to live in Africa. All right. I talked to one of the top African historians. All right. Here's what happened in Africa. People came and colonized Africa. Europeans colonized Africa. And it wasn't like one African country, one country colonized Africa. Spain colonized parts of Africa. France colonized parts of Africa. England colonized parts of Africa. Portugal colonized parts of Africa. And America, through the American Colonization Society, founded the only privately owned country in the history of the world, Liberia. It started off as a privately owned company. And so what would happen is the colonizers would come in and they had guns and the Africans didn't. And so they would conquer all the different tribes. And, a lot of times these tribes had conflicts going back hundreds of years. It's not like they just walked around throwing spears and whatever your racist mentality is. They had a history before these colonizers came. Then the colonizers, they fought with each other to get these artificial barriers drawn. So like in Europe, you have countries, right? You have nationalities that are divided up by kind of a natural course of history, right? Where certain things like religion and language and culture kind of became a main thing. So like Danish people live in Denmark and German people live in Germany, and the German people that live in Germany speak German, and the Danish people that live in Denmark speak Danish, and Italians speak Italian and live in Italy. This is like the whole concept of what makes a nation. That happened organically, but in Africa it didn't happen organically. Those nations like Italy and England and Denmark and whatever, I don't know if Denmark ever colonized, I'm not sure who, but Denmark I think colonized Greenland. But anyway, all these countries colonized different parts of Africa, and the tribes that were there and had been conflicting with each other sometimes were grouped into the same colony. But now they had an oppressor that oppressed them both and prevented them from having their wars anymore. Then decolonization happened, and when the colonizers left, these tribes that had their ancient tribal conflicts went back to having those conflicts, but it like was worse because now they were fighting for all this other territory that they never used to fight for. Where I lived in Liberia, and there are like, I forget, I want to say 32 different tribes in that area. And while I was there, I got there right after this guy named Samuel Canyon Doe had the first coup. And before that, American Liberians had been running the country, and these were all descendants of the freed slaves that went to go and settle Liberia. And then they subdued the local population. But then Samuel Canyon Doe overthrew the country. He overheard the officer's plot. He wasn't even literate. And he overthrew the country, and then he did these barbaric things to another tribe. And then somebody from that tribe took over, and then he did barbaric things to Doe's tribe. And then another tribe came over, and it's just for the next 10 years, well, 15, 20 years. I mean, after Doe got thrown out, it was like 10 years, and it was the most violent country on earth. It was just all these tribes killing each other. That's what happened. It has nothing to do with socialism or not socialism. There was no chance for a government to exist. Your ideas of what socialism is just anything that's not, stamped, capitalism by the United States of America. You can't talk to them. It's a cult. I've tried so hard. Or non-homogenous nations. Yes. You can have, like, we're a non-homogenous nation, or at least we used to be. Donald Trump's trying to make us one. What's so great about Europe? I don't think anything's so great about Europe. I'm just distinguishing it from Africa in terms of how the nations were formed. European nations were formed organically by history and, wars and all of that kind of stuff, where they kind of just ended up settling on their own territories. They didn't have an oppressive third party come in and say, all right, Germany and Spain, you're the same country now. How do you ensure only citizens vote? That's a good question. I think we need to have a system where only citizens vote, but all citizens can vote. And that's the conversation we need to have. Not whether we should do that, but how we should do that. I think that one way is most people, 98% of people have birth certificates. And that should be a way. But the other 2% that don't have birth certificates, and when I say they don't have birth certificates, I don't mean that they can't, I don't just mean that they have struggle getting to them. There's about some of them, they just don't have one available and they can order one. But there's a number of people, at least about 1 million or 2 Americans, that are eligible voters who just do not have birth certificates. So what procedure can be set up so that those people who are American citizens can still vote? Because right now, the SAVE Act is only asking for either you have to have a birth certificate or you have to have a document that you have to get a birth certificate to get. So without a birth certificate, you can't vote. So if you weren't issued a birth certificate when you were born, which some people are, especially elderly people, were never issued a birth certificate. There's another group of people that were issued birth certificates, but the place where they were issued it was destroyed. So like they were born in a hospital, that hospital burned down, got destroyed by Hurricane Katrina, got blown away by a tornado, something like that. And so they can't order the original birth certificate because the original birth certificate no longer exists. I'm saying we should establish a way that those people can get a birth certificate because they didn't do anything that you didn't do. They didn't commit a crime. They should have the same right to vote as you do. Like it shouldn't be the luck of the draw. You are issued a birth certificate, therefore you can vote. I think that how we do that there right now, what has been in place is a system where people have to testify under, they check a box and say, I'm a United States citizen who was born in America, but, under penalty of perjury. And they just signed that. And we have not had issues with that being the system. We have very, very few non-citizens voting. The very, very few non-citizens who do vote use forged IDs to do so. So I think that we have a system that is effectively right now making it so that non-citizens can't vote. Right now, it's against the law. If you vote and you're a non-citizen, you risk time in prison. You risk being deported. Because not all the non-citizens who vote are here illegally, right? They risk losing their job that they worked so hard to come over here and get. They can lose their green cards. There is a lot at risk and very, very, very little to gain. Like one vote out of, so if you look at the last couple elections, 160 million-ish votes per election. So it's going to change add one vote out of 160 million. So it doesn't change anything. The risk reward is so off the charts. It's all reward or all risk and almost no reward. So that's the main reason people don't do it, because there's no incentive to. And I think that in itself is a big way of preventing it from happening. But how would you approach it so that people who don't have birth certificates can still vote? How would you guarantee that somebody could vote even if they don't have a birth certificate because they were never issued one or because it was destroyed? Non-citizens are not voting, non-issue. Agree. I mean, and this is that's why they've gone to, well, we don't need proof. Why we just need to feel secure. And this goes back to the whole thing I was talking about, how MAGAs are a bunch of cowards. Everything they do is afraid. Oh, I'm afraid the non-citizens are going to steal the election from me. But there's no evidence they are. That doesn't matter. I'm still afraid. The people that brought you facts don't care about your feelings, want to disenfranchise Americans because their feelings they got the scary feelings. Better a conservative than a Democrat. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. What do you mean what is better a conservative than a Democrat? What a pet talking point about voter IDs. What's a pet talking? Brother, you just said yourself, votes only for Americans. I don't know what you're talking about. I never said anything at all about voter IDs. I didn't say one word about voter IDs. Being a white liberal on YouTube makes you an expert. No, I didn't say that. We covered that yesterday here. It was a disaster, just a bunch of trolling. I didn't know that. Oh, so you're asking what's a pet talking point about voter IDs? Brother, you just said yourself, votes only for Americans. Okay, so I'm trying to say, Americans should be able to vote, and only Americans should be able to vote. But every American should be able to vote. That's my philosophy on voting. Only Americans should be able to vote, but every American should be able to vote. I don't see how anybody could have any issue with that statement. I think that should be like everybody should just be, yep, I agree. You're either agreeing, if you disagree, you're either saying that non-citizens should be able to vote, which they're not, or you're saying that American citizens shouldn't be able to vote because you're so afraid that non-citizens will vote. France is not rationing air conditioning. They don't have air conditioning. That's actually more objectively true. Europe was not built with like the kind of heat waves that are hitting Europe now are not normal for Europe. It's almost like the climate is changing or something. I've lived there. I lived in Italy for 2 years. I lived in England for 3 years. It's cooler there. You have you ever looked at a globe? Look at a globe and look at New York City and London. Did you know that London is actually way north of Montreal? We always think of like England and New York as being similar in latitude, but because of the way we look at maps and stuff, actually Europe is way north of where we typically think of it. Look at a globe. Look at a globe. Put your hand on New York and then roll your globe around until you get to Europe, and you'll start seeing some things that will blow your mind. I think New York is like aligned with Madrid. In a way, it was a small victory. It proved the MAGA don't have any talking points, just name calling. In that sense, it was a victory, but it was also a loss because my goal here is I want to be able to talk to people for real and not just have tit for tat kind of stuff. Like that's why I try to frame things in a way. Like I think that not only Americans should vote. Like I'm willing to capitulate to you that talking point without having to go through all the stuff about non-citizens not voting. I don't worry about having to go through all that stuff because I know they're not voting. But can you concede that if there are laws that prevent American citizens from being able to vote who have done nothing wrong, there is something wrong with that law? That we need to find a law that makes the same for everybody. If half of America doesn't feel good about our election laws so that you will feel good about them, have you made election integrity better, or have you just changed who has problems? You got the president of the United States talking about, how we need the defense to fight against the communists in America. And so he's asking for more money, this $350 million for defense. And then he's talking about sending the military to go and patrol, or not the military, the ICE agents to go and patrol polling places. Do you see why some people might feel like that is not election integrity? Can you see why, like, threatening to imprison people who register non-citizens is going to affect election integrity? Because people, even if they accidentally do it, they could be put in jail. And so they don't want that job. Nobody wants to go and volunteer for something that they're going to be imprisoned for doing nothing wrong. And then you've got this system, this computer system off in DC, that the Republicans want to use, that's got like a 20% error rate. It flags non-citizens, or it flags citizens, actual citizens, as non-citizens. For instance, it will not identify that somebody became a citizen, like they just naturalized. Okay. And so then they can be removed. The state can force them to be removed from the poll. or the federal government can say to the state government, you have to take that person off the poll, off your voting rolls. And they can do that 2 weeks before the election. There's no time frame involved. There's no notification involved. So you could go to vote, and you're an American citizen, and just be told, sorry, you can't vote. And if that vote if that state doesn't have same-day registration or have some sort of conditional ballot set up, then you could just be denied the right to vote altogether. And there's not enough time for all the states to set up all the procedures for those just in cases thing. Look, if you want to have election integrity law, do it with integrity. Do it with time to enact everything. Do it in a way to make sure that everybody's still going to be allowed to vote, that should be allowed to vote. Do it with time to implement things. Don't do it sloppily, and don't do it under the guise of, if we don't do this, we'll never win the election again. Because that's starting to sound like the real reason that you're having an issue is that you're afraid that you're going to lose the actual election, which polling is certainly suggesting is a possibility. That's only if you opt in, willfully leaving out facts. What do you mean? What is only if you opt in, willfully leaving out facts? What are you talking about? Opt into what? Leaving out what facts? I have no idea what you're talking about. The European Union is a socialist. The European Union is social democracy in various degrees. I think I've come to prefer the term mixed capitalism because it's not loaded. It's not like USSR kind of, because people don't understand what the word socialism means, but they understand what the word capitalism means. But yes, what most of Europe is mixed capitalism, to where there's private ownership and there's public ownership of different things depending on what they are. We used to fight communism. We never fought communism. We fought a lot of things that weren't communism. Look at what happened in Guatemala. We fought things that aren't in America's best interest and called them communism. Do you know what happened in Guatemala, Kenny? Back in the mid 40s, I want to say late 40s. I guess it would have been late 40s, early 50s. There was this fruit company called the United Fruit Company that owned like 90% of the farmable land in Guatemala. And that company was an American company, and two of the people that were on its board were the Dulles brothers, who, by the way, also ran the CIA and was the Secretary of State. Then guy ran for office. He, on a democratic country, he democratically won the election. And he had this idea, and he won in large part because of it, that the UFC had all of this land. They owned all the land, but most of it was being unused because they didn't want to saturate the banana supply in America and drive the price of bananas down and thereby reduce their profit margins. And so they owned the land, and they didn't just own the land. They owned the power company. They owned the roads. They owned literally like 90% of Guatemala. And by the way, the UFC is now known as Chiquita. Chiquita Bananas, yeah, same company. So they paid nothing, like almost the dirt wages. You think about how, like American poverty, like black poverty in America in the 50s, it was pretty severe. It's why we needed to fight a war on poverty. But the average black family that was in poverty in America made about 40 times as much per year as the average family in Guatemala. Like they were making the equivalent of, in today's money, like $200 a year. They were incredibly impoverished. And there was all this farmable land that was being not farmed because this one company that basically owned the entire country wasn't used. And then on top of that, they paid their taxes by declaring that that land was worth a lot less than it was. So what this guy did, this communist is what they called him, he wanted to be able to buy land from the UFC based on what they declared the value as, and then sell it to local farmers who could then farm that land and make money for themselves. So they would own the land, the individuals, not the country of Guatemala and not the UFC, would own the land. So he won this democratically elected, he won an actual election based on this platform. And then what happened is the Dulles brothers were like, oh, we can't have this. And so they staged a coup. They staged a coup and they overthrew that country. And then they installed an authoritarian dictator that was there for decades and brutalized people and killed people. And the reason that we still have problems in Guatemala goes back to that coup and the subsequent totalitarian dictator that followed. We have overturned, I want to say 48. I think I've counted it up to as 48 since 1906 under Teddy Roosevelt. We've had 48 different governments in South America and Central America where we have overthrown the government. And most recently, Argentina or Venezuela and Donald Trump. So no, we didn't used to fight communism. We never fought communism. We used to cry communism under the to justify a whole bunch of evil we were doing all around the world. What is this BS debate about air conditioning? Left-wing people talk about the lights, stupid stuff that isn't. I don't know what you're. How about you hang out and you listen and then you decide, like, anyway. But you all you Americans, what is your obsession about AC? And the whole conversation is not about AC. The conversation is about utilities and public utilities. You're not touching my SC. I'm not trying to touch your SC. I don't even know what your SC is. You're a small male rooster. Yes, I do, of course. I even spelled it, duh. When I was a yak in Tibet, I was stationed at Lama's palace. Yak, 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 yak. King Trump shall reign supreme. Nobody is taking my AC. Okay, yeah. Now, if you live in Texas, they'll turn it off for you. The obsession with air conditioning is because it's the middle of July and it's 90 degrees. Right now, air conditioning is a big deal in Europe because they're experiencing heat waves that they've never experienced before. A lot of people don't have air conditioning in Europe because the housing wasn't built that way. And, anyway, people die of heat stroke. Did you know more people die of heat stroke in the summer than freeze to death in the winter? I mean, heat is actually a bigger danger than cold. Hey, Krusty. Hey, Clown. Oh, no, racism. Boo-hoo. Oh, yeah, see? Bro said King Trump, it's president fascist. I don't know what that means. You know that that has no meaning. What doesn't have any meaning? Hey there, Rainbow Kitty. I'm going to talk about something today. I'm glad you're here because I want to talk about something in a bit that I think you'll really have some things to say. And it's good to see you. Or laziness. Okay. Nothing angers the black middle class more than this conversation. I don't know what conversation. I have been just sitting here talking about how like 80%, 82% of African Americans are not in poverty and that we stereotype black people as being in poverty. Are you talking about the like I am saying that the black people that aren't in poverty probably get tired of being characterized as being in poverty. I think there's actually some kind of overlap here with MAGAs that is hidden, because I think that people see a successful black person and assume they overcame all this adversity, and people see a successful white person and assume they never had to overcome adversity. But white people can overcome and face adversity too. There are white people that are raised poor. There are white people that are raised. I'm not saying this to be anti-white, but there are white people that are raised in trailer parks. I'll give you one example. Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton spent part of his childhood literally living in a trailer park. And his brother was called white trash. I think he came out pretty well. And so people see white people that do well and assume that they just had everything handed to them. And people see black people that do well and assume that they overcame, like have gangs and violence and the inner city culture and all of this stuff. Well, I know a lot of black people that were raised middle class and upper class that are doing just fine. Most of the black people I know are like that. I know some black people that were, raised in poverty and that had to overcome. But most of the black people I know, and I know a lot of black people, were raised in the same situation I was. Fascist is a dictator-style government. Well, it's an authoritarian government that tells you what to do, kind of like get Obama. No, that's not what a fascist government is. No. That is not what a fascist government is. You're arguing with people who don't know the standard deduction. Congratulations, you have been voted the gayest person on the internet. Well, that's interesting. Wait until I tell my wife. Your society conditioned you well. Okay, I don't know what society conditioned me, but what about your society? Did your society condition you? Or did you overcome your society? Trump said Kamala was a half human. Trump posted pictures of the Obamas as apes. The only people he is giving asylum to are white. Maggots use stats to justify racism. Please, I say this all the time. Please don't use the term maggots on my channel. I don't agree with MAGAs. I don't agree with dehumanizing language either. That is actually something fascists do. I refuse to call them maggots because they are people. They're misguided people. They are wrong people, but they are people. I'm an asshole from El Paso. I'm an asshole from Elgin. Nice to meet you. I'm a different kind of asshole, maybe. Sounds like TDS. It's real. No, it's not. Kelly, remind them about Justin Eichhorn every single time. Who's Justin Eichhorn? Every time I think of Eichhorn, I think of Einkorn. Oh, yeah. The Justin Eichhorn. He's the guy that wanted to make TDS like this official thing, and then he got charged with like raping kiddos. Using a few black entertainers as an argument against systemic racism is the wildest thing I have heard in a while. I think that was using that as the person. There was somebody that was saying that like 63% of black people live in poverty, and kind of like using that as a justification for like black people are inferior or something. And so somebody was pushing back against that. But yeah, I agree either way. I think that using like the systemic racism exists, and we should talk about how to solve it instead of just having silly conversations around it. Systemic racism is real. There's no question about that. That's just a statistical observation. And so if systemic is racism is real, like black people are more likely to be incarcerated. Black people are more likely to be stopped for things like drugs, even though they don't do drugs any more often than white people. They are more likely to be charged with it. They are more likely to be plead guilty for it. They're more likely to be found guilty for it if they go to trial. They are more likely to get a longer sentence for it. They are less likely to get early parole. They are less likely to own their own homes. They are less likely to finish a college degree. They are less likely to inherit wealth from their parents. They're less likely to be raised in a stable home, because 1 in 7 black men ends up going to jail in their lifetimes. And over nonviolent offenses that white people do but don't get sent to jail for. There's no question that systemic racism exists, and that black people are get the short end of that stick. And there's only 2 possibilities, right? It's either society causing it, or they're just inferior. And that's why. It's either because, just as black people, they are innately inferior. I don't think they are. I think that the reason is our society. If you say it's not the society, then you are saying you are a racist. Not you, Tom, obviously. To the clown that was talking earlier. But systemic racism exists, and it's either society or race is the actual problem. If race is not the actual problem, then society is. We need to fix what is wrong with society that is causing that problem. That's my stance on all that. What it is, that's the conversation we need to have. Not debating whether it exists. It does. That's just a fact. Democrat, Republican, liberal doesn't matter. The whole system is corrupt, and keeping the masses focused on hating each other is how they keep up. I don't think that there is some universal they. There's not like some mastermind just sitting there lording it over. In which case, if there is, then people like you that come in and say, oh, I'm superior to all of you, and I can condescend and I can talk down to all of you because I know that they are doing it. I'm from Europe, and I can assure you that there is no socialism in Europe. You're not very bright. Right. There's something called equivocation. And equivocation is when people use words differently to mean different things and then subtly shift back and forth. That's why I'm trying to say, let's just call it mixed capitalism. So, would you agree that, I'm not sure where in Europe you're at, but that what you practice is a form of mixed capitalism? Because I think that we should just refer to it as that rather than democratic socialism or social democracy or whatever. Because, especially the MAGAs, they're not that bright. They're not that thoughtful. And they're, like when it comes to nuance, to them, a nuance is somebody that's sister just had a baby. It's a nuance. All right, sorry. I didn't even think they're listening at this point. They just key in on certain words you say and then try to run some hateful whip about it. Hey, Brett, I think I talked about this yesterday, but I'm working on an app. I'm going to develop an app for my website that people can play, and it's going to be called, it's going to be like MAGA Bingo, except instead of getting a bingo, you get a Trump. And then there'll be like different, like the free space will be TDS, because you can't go 5 minutes without somebody saying TDS. But every time, everybody will get their own random card, and then you follow along on the bingo card, and then the first person to get a Trump wins. Regardless where they're from, it always ends up with an insult at the end of the statement. Yeah, there's a lot of corrupt officials in Africa. There are a lot of corrupt officials in Africa. You know what? There's also a lot of corrupt officials in America. There's also a lot of good people in Africa and a lot of honest people in Africa. And there's also a lot of honest people in America. Thanks for making me look up Liberian history. I thought it was mostly beneficial gig. Oops, more colonialism. Yeah. It's really interesting. It's actually fascinating when you look at the history of Liberia, because here's what happened: is they sent back the 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 uh the freed American slaves, and the freed American slaves did not grow up in Africa. Like, they didn't know how to survive in Africa, right? They knew how to survive on a plantation. That's the only life they ever knew. They'd been there for 400 years, right? They had black people. A lot of black people have roots going back further than most of the white people in this country. We talk about, oh, what about our heritage? What about their heritage? Anyway, I digress. So you had all these black people get sent back to Africa, all these freed American slaves, and they're not necessarily even, their ancestors aren't even necessarily from that part of Africa. They just got dumped there. And so they only knew one system, one way of living, and that was slavery. And so they said, we're the slave owners now. And so they started subjugating the local tribes, and they would do this kind of indentured servitude type thing where people would serve them, or they would, like, rent them out to Portugal or something. And they basically survived this way. I think up until, I don't know, I want to say around the 30s or something. Maybe might have been a little earlier. But for about the first 50, 60, 70 years that Liberia was a country, its primary source of income, its primary export, its number one export, was human labor. And they weren't the ones doing the labor. The American Liberians, or what they're called, were not the ones doing the labor. They were sending out the native tribal people. And so then Goodyear, they invented rubber tires, and they have all these rubber trees. Oops, there goes another rubber tree. Yep, that was in Liberia. It's like the number one producer of natural rubber in the world. And so they started exporting that, and then they started now, and they also do some stuff with a lot of ships will fly a Liberian flags because it's the cheapest country to register. Anyway, there's a brief history of Liberia. Completely incapable of just saying an opinion without an insult at the end of your sentence. And it's just like, I would love to have a productive conversation. I would even love to have a productive, even if you could just say what you're trying to be productive about. Like, what is a forward-thinking goal that you think America should have about anything that doesn't involve being cruel to somebody? Like, why is that so hard? Trump, best there is, best there was, and best there ever will be. Well, that's such a, what did he do? What has Trump done that's better than freeing the slaves? I always ask that. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. What has Trump done that's better than freeing the slaves? You can talk about he did this good thing or that bad thing, this good thing. Was it better than freeing the slaves? Can you put your statement back on the screen? I think I don't even know if I can. I don't know what statement. Sorry. Europe has a wonderful transit. I think the bigger question is, how do we ensure that MAGA senators only vote once? Ooh. Wow. How about we ensure that MAGA DAs vote legally? Ken Paxton has been sitting here committing voter fraud while he prosecutes people for committing the kind of voter fraud that he is committing. Have you heard about this? His wife kicked him out of the house after she found out he was cheating on her, and filed for divorce. And he's been living in a different residence than where he's registered to vote for the last couple of years. And I guess he's voted in like 7 different elections while he's living in an address that is not his own. And this is a thing that not only he's said elsewhere is illegal, he has prosecuted people for doing that exact same thing. So my question for Ken Paxton is, when are you going to prosecute Ken Paxton for doing the things that Ken Paxton promised to do? I can't stand uneducated people like this guy. They just say whatever. No, I'm just saying things that I am saying things that educated people know. If you want to challenge me on any detail on any specific thing, go ahead. But when you say things like this is just more MAGA cowardice. This is not engaging in the facts because you're afraid of the facts. They make you run and hide. It's stupid because Trump says I have the freedom to be. Hey, Brett. All right, so Rainbow, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to transition now to a different topic. I've been thinking about this, and it rides on the heels of this. Like MAGA, everything that it seems like every single policy, every single talking point is all about fear. If you want to find the thing that ties all MAGA policies together, it's fear. And so I've been thinking about this quip. For those that don't know, Rainbow is trans and offers a trans perspective sometimes on our show that I really appreciate. And so I've been thinking that's why I'm glad you're here, Rainbow. And it's not like with a name like Rainbow Kitty, there, like it should be a shock. So, and just so you know, I'm not like outing him or anything, and him or vice for Rainbow outing her. Is it her? It's her, right? Or they? I think you said it's they. I'm not outright. I'm not outing them. But there's this argument that trans women should not be able to use public restrooms because cis women deserve a place where they can feel safe. And I know that, some of you are sitting there wigging out that I use the term cis women and trans women, but I'm using that for logical reasons. Don't feel like cisgender women is a biological term. It is not a pejorative. But they say that they deserve a place where they feel safe. So I want to break this down into different components. The first one is everybody should feel safe anywhere, or at least be safe anywhere. But feeling safe and being safe are not the same thing. I know people that go rock climbing. I have a friend, he goes rock climbing. He does it without any ropes or anything. And he just, like Spider-Man. See, he feels safe doing that. That would scare the poop out of me. Like don't stand below me. I wouldn't want to do that, coming up behind me because I'm going to just do a Trump right. I am not going to have any control over my bowels. So I'm not going to feel safe doing that because I have height issues, right? And some people are fine flying. Some people are afraid to fly. But we don't like ground flights because some people are afraid to fly. We don't. Some people are afraid of spiders. We don't have some sort of anti-spider police force that goes out and eradicates spiders because some people are afraid of spiders. We don't rule by fear. We don't set policy based on fear. We set policy based on risk. Our laws for these things are based on risk. We have a Food and Drug Administration, or at least we used to, that regulated what happens with food because food poisoning can be real, right? Foodborne illnesses are real. There is a real risk to eating food that is, been processed by somebody else. And so we regulate that because there is a risk, not because there is a fear, but because there is a risk. So is there a risk to transgender women using the women's restroom? And I have looked and I have looked and I have looked over and over again. I have looked many, many times. And I have yet to find an example of a transgender woman assaulting a cisgender woman in a women's restroom. That doesn't mean I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying I haven't been able to find it. I can see the MAGAs already sitting there just like just typing furiously away, talking, ready to go on about Lauren, Virginia, the Lauren County, Virginia. That was not a transgender woman. That was a boy, a cisgender boy who had a relationship with a girl, and they would hook up in that bathroom. And then one day she said no, and he assaulted her. All right. I'm not saying that means it's okay. I'm saying he just wasn't transgender. And they adopted a transgender policy later that allowed for transgender women to use the restroom. But this was after that assault happened, which again did not involve anybody that was transgender. There was another case in Wyoming where a transgender woman assaulted a 10-year-old girl in a bathroom, but that bathroom was the bathroom of the person that owned the house. It was a private restroom. The transgender person was somebody that was known to them, and it was a transgender person that was invited into their home. And it's a transgender person that is now in jail because assaulting 10-year-old girls is illegal. Again, being transgender doesn't mean that you can't commit crimes. It is, the question is there a greater risk to letting transgender women use public restrooms? And there's no evidence at all. Different studies have been done on it. There's never been any study to verify that transgender women are a greater threat to cisgender women in public restrooms. And this is actually where it's kind of interesting. You know who's more likely to assault women in public restrooms than transgender women? Is cisgender women. And I was like, wow, I'm kind of surprised to hear that. And then I was telling my wife, who, by the way, is a cisgender woman, and she's like, of course. I guess I don't have as much experience in public restrooms as she does. And she's like, yeah, it's called bullying. And I'm like, oh, well, when you put it that way. So cisgender women actually bully cisgender women in the public restrooms. And you know who else? Who else assaults women in public restrooms? Is cisgender men assault women in public restrooms. Believe it or not, there is not like having laws against going into the restroom does not put a magic force field that like blocks the Y chromosome from getting through the door. If somebody is going to want to go into a restroom and assault somebody, assault is illegal. They're already willing to break that law. You don't think they're willing to break the law about entering a room? So we got some problems here, right? Like, okay, so cisgender, if women should be afraid of transgender women, they should be more afraid of cisgender women, and they should be even more afraid of cisgender men. They're actually the safest people for them to be around in the bathroom is transgender women. Like that's their safety net. That's the least likely to be a threat to them. But on the other hand, like I said, it's not just about feeling safe, it's being safe. 40% of transgender women report every year they are assaulted in a bathroom, either verbally or physically. And that happens in the men's room and that happens in the women's room. Do you think if a transgender woman goes into a men's room with a bunch of MAGA hat, beer belly, belly button scratching, wife beater wearing bully MAGAs, that they're just going to say, oh, how you doing today? Let me get some toilet paper for you. So they are the ones that are the most threatened. They are the ones that are actually being assaulted in the restroom that they're supposed to be using. And that's if they can get in there. 10% of transgender men can't get into the men's room or the women's room. So we talk a lot about transgender women. Transgender men can't even go to the bathroom in public because everybody, all these MAGAs are all worked up about this scary thing that doesn't happen. Like non-citizens voting or whatever. So that's why I say, are you, if you really want to say people have a right to feel safe in their own places, well, it's also not your place so much. It's a public restroom. If your taxes are paying for that, so are theirs. And some people will say things like, well, they just get a third bathroom for transgender people. Well, why don't you just get a third bathroom and call it the I'm afraid of transgender people bathroom? And then all the people that are all terrified of transgender people, they can go there and they can just admit that's why they have to go use an extra one. And let them pay for that. Who pays for this third bathroom? So anyway, that's my take on. I've been thinking about that and why that bothers me, because it's sophistry, right? It sounds simple on the surface until you actually think about it. Like your feelings are not what sets policy. Transgender people are the most safe people that you can be peeing next to, and it's a public restroom. It's not your place. It's not yours. You don't own it. It doesn't belong to you. And you're not going to be the one that has to pay for the changes and stuff. If it's yours, then you can do what you want with it, but it's not yours. It's the public's. Okay. All right. So this I hope you can come back to this later, because I want to see if there's any reaction to what I was just saying, but that's a good comment. And I have a lot to say about something like that. I think you're true. I think what you're saying is both true and not true. There's a lot of truth to it, but that doesn't mean that that doesn't set aside the fact that in general the left is more in support of the 95%, and that the Republicans are more responsible for the 5%, and the ones that are making this divide, like the top versus bottom thing versus the left versus right thing, well, you're just saying the same thing a different way. Give me one example of a current law that prevents American citizens from voting. I'm not talking, I didn't say there is one. I said that the SAVE Act would be one. We build our houses to retain heat in Europe. We don't have an action in our homes. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down. If I missed, I probably missed some good comments. Okay. So I don't know if I'm not going to show this, but I had another guy. It looks like Brett already blocked him. We have these people. They come on and then they type one letter after another. Like each comment is a letter, and they make these racial epithets. That guy has a chicken, not a rooster. That was good. All right. So you got my small male rooster thing, or small rooster thing. Okay. I am way behind here. So Bill Clinton disgraced Arkansas, the United States, with his behavior. Okay. But he was still somebody that was partly raised in a trailer, a literal trailer, and became president. Your opinion of him is not really relevant to that. I think with every president there are good things and there are bad things, except for Donald Trump. There's only bad things, and to a degree, George W. Bush. George W. Bush. The best thing that happened to George W. Bush was Donald Trump, because he was the worst president in my lifetime until until Donald Trump came along and made the nasty, awful things that George W. Bush not look so bad. A fascist government digs large holes and buries masses. No, that's actually not one of the tenets of fascism. That's actually not one of the tenets of fascism. Yeah. Or somebody on the horizontal. Yeah, there's like the full screen for if you're in a laptop, and then there's like there's a profile for if you're on a phone. Most of the people that are engaging are on the stream, so like the conversation there looks a lot better. So far in the last year, half the Democrat presidential candidates have been accused of fraud. There hasn't been any presidential candidates that were either accused of or investigated for fraud. So if by half you mean none, the only democratical like what Kamala Harris, what are you talking about? Name a Democratic candidate that has been credibly accused with fraud. You know who's been convicted of fraud? Donald Trump. They are more likely to be pulled over during the day than the white people. Surprisingly, not that no, they don't. That's not true. It does not balance out. I didn't. The statistic is not, based on what time of day. This is a made up thing. I don't know where you get this. It is not true. Oh, see, I mean, what? Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have had all these tariffs. We wouldn't have a war with Iran. We wouldn't have had, like, just in your alternative universe where you're afraid of everything. Then I can see why it would have been scary to have a black woman as president. But I'm not a coward. Hey, how you doing, Paul? Um, uh, I have not seen you in a long time. Good. I was actually just thinking about you, believe it or not too long ago. I was talking about Denmark. Anyway, Paul, I know Paul from Twitter and from my basketball writing days. He's a Bulls fan. I used to cover the Bulls for Bleach Report. So, all right, I'm trying to. Well-regulated capitalism is a good way to put it. I mean, it's people own their own cars, they own their own houses in Europe. They just. Oh no, wait, Paul, you're not. It's Mort that's from Denmark. Are you from Denmark too? I forget where you're from. I know you're in Europe. Captain Fantastic has to jump. All right, well, thanks for joining. Don't have a favorite, but I think I'm going with Argentina there. Okay. Wow. Okay. All right. So let's just start going. MAGA whole economic trickle down theory comes from a Duncan billionaire champagne party tower, and somebody thought they were a genius with the analogy. They fed it to labor. It's like the most. It's like if you want to look at the whole trickle down theory, it's basically comes down to this notion that rich people don't have enough money because the poor people are hogging it all. So we need to take the money from the poor people and give it to the rich people. It's the dumbest premise for any kind of, and it's been failing for 40 years. ever since we started implementing these, you know, kind of economics, you've just seen, if you know what the Gini report is, it's a report of wealth inequality in a country, and it's just gotten wider and wider and wider in America ever since we started, you know, like giving more money to rich people and less money to poor people. It's almost like you could have seen this coming. It is like, you know, if you go, imagine that you have, you walk into a house and the kids are arguing over, you know, there's a candy bar, right? And it's more or less in half, but maybe one side is a little bit bigger, and they're arguing over who gets which side. And so you say, I'm going to handle this, and so you take off and you slice off a little tiny slice. That's the difference, right? And then you give one kid that slice, and then you give the other kid the two big pieces, and you say, see, now it's all even. That's trickle down economics. Trump cut those regulations down into a shell of their former selves. Yes, he's destroying any kind of regulation, and his Supreme Court, the Republican Supreme Court, is just gutted the very notion of regulation when they overturned Chevron doctrine, which, by the way, you hear some Republicans talk about it and they're like, well, the Supreme Court decided that the Chevron doctrine was wrong. The Supreme Court is the one that came up with the Chevron doctrine in the first place. It's not like that was a liberal idea. It was the whole thing, and it was actually in support of Reagan. People don't even know what the Chevron doctrine was. The Chevron doctrine was the EPA was charged with regulating certain things, and how that happened was up to the executive branch. And then Reagan tried to change some of the regulations, so that he tried to loosen the regulations. And the lawsuit was that that wasn't the intent of the law, and he wasn't following the intent of the law. The Chevron doctrine said if Congress isn't explicit in how a law is supposed to be enforced, that's up to the executive branch to interpret. And so it actually was Chevron doctrine was a conservative leaning doctrine. And now they said, no. Judges get to decide. The whole point of having it was that, the original idea is the people that are experts in certain areas. You can't have legislators and presidents, you know, experts in every single thing, right? Like science and, you know, biology and immunology and all of these kinds of things. You need to have actual experts. And when I say experts, I mean experts. One of the things that MAGA is doing is undermining the notion of expertise as being a valid thing. But yes, we actually need experts. If I need a heart surgery, I don't want somebody that learned how to do heart surgery watching a YouTube video. I want somebody that's an actual expert on heart surgery. Some things are complicated and take a lifetime to learn and require expertise. So this kind of nonsense that expertise doesn't matter. That's how you get nincompoops like RFK Jr. sitting there releasing these AI generated reports that are actually, you know, foundations for overturning actual science. Anyway. Personally, don't care who in the room when I poop. I prefer no one. I advocate to code all buildings with single occupant bathrooms. That way MAGA can STFU and I don't have to smell their poop. The only problem, I mean, like there's that. I like the idea of just having a bathroom that, for, you know, like have a coward's bathroom for people that are afraid to pee in the same room as somebody that might be trans. California, yes. There are people that commit crimes and go to prison, and there are prisoners there that also commit crimes and abuse each other. But let's just pretend it's only transgender women that ever committed a crime in and it only happens in California prisons, because that's not at all a bad faith argument. Argentina scores again. Oh, wow, Argentina's up 2-1. Are they the last team from the Western from the Western Hemisphere in? I know Brazil's out. Minors can't consent. Consent to what? Peeing? I don't know what you're talking about. Minors can't consent. What is minors? What are they consenting to? So Mo says, in the barn where they belong. Together in the barn where they. It's an excuse. Okay, I'm missing something. I think I scrolled past some things that make all this MAGA are animals. I can't say stuff like that. I just can't use dehumanizing language. Just means they won't get punished in the stat. Whatever. I have no. What do you mean get punished in the stat? Who is getting punished in what stat? Humans are violent. Water is wet. What are you talking about, Josh? Huh. This message is held for review. I think he's showing. Brother, just because you are accepting of this abnormal behavior doesn't mean everyone else should be accepting. Just because you reject it doesn't mean everybody else has to reject it. I don't think it's abnormal. But whether I accept it or reject it, or whether you think it's a normal or abnormal, or whoever you think, the fact that there is no risk there doesn't change. The fact it doesn't hurt anyone doesn't change. The fact that transgender women are the ones getting hurt doesn't change. This has nothing to do with anybody's feelings or opinions. It has to do with facts and risk and actual threat. The people that are threatened are the transgender people. Cisgender women attack more cisgender women in the bathroom than transgender women do. And cisgender men attack more cisgender women in the bathroom than trans women do. Trans people are the least threat to women in bathrooms. That is a fact. That is just a statistical fact. Whether you accept it or not is irrelevant. I worry about there being toilet paper and their hand dryer works. What's the total number of transgender people in this country? It's probably it's 1 to 2%. Identify as transgender. So about 2.8 million people, according to Google. I asked, how have you ever had to pee next to a transgender person? And did they give you the cooties? Or if you haven't, if you have and they didn't bother you, then it's not a problem. And if you haven't, then it's not a problem. I don't understand why people spend so much time and energy on this. They're not a threat. I'm a strong, secure male. I'm not afraid. I can't speak for you. I'm sorry, you're afraid. Yes, MAGAs are afraid of everything. They're afraid of immigrants. They're afraid of immigrants voting. They're afraid of liberals. They're afraid of women with blue hair. They're afraid of Antifa. They're afraid of communism. They're afraid of socialism. They're afraid of Joe Biden. They're afraid of Kamala Harris. They're afraid of Tim Walz. They're afraid of anybody that disagrees with them. They're afraid of libraries. are definitely afraid of libraries. They're afraid of facts. They're afraid of streams where people state them, and they just start hollering out random MAGA Tourette's epithets every time they get encountered with a fact. MAGA are all closeted and angry. I don't know if they're all closeted, but they sure are angry because they're afraid, and that's the way that they've been taught to handle their fears is anger. Anger is their way of handling fear. Maybe somebody can hold your hand in the bathroom. All hear is hate. Are you saying all you hear is hate? How am I hating? Now, like me saying that MAGA women or that transgender women aren't a threat to cisgender women that's hateful to you? Where's the hate in that? I'm making an observation about MAGA people being afraid of everything. That's not being hateful. That's an observation. Look at Trump. Look at every single thing that MAGA stands for. It's all fear-based. Name one thing that's not fear-based. Look at your own comments in this very conversation. Everything is fear. You're a coward. That's not hate. That's an observation. You keep telling me you're afraid of things, I'm going to say you're a fraidy cat. That's what... Make America cowards again. Now MAGA can't tell everyone that they have to go to the little girl's room to powder their nose and ask for a partner. I'm trans and I don't even leave my apartment to check the mail because I'm worried I would get assaulted. And I don't think that I'm just going to go out on a limb based on the statistics. And if you don't mind me asking, I'm going to assume you've been assaulted before. And so it's not an irrational fear, but it's a rational one that has occurred at least once. I mean, I honestly, I know I know actual people who are trans. It's not just, and I actually, if you were to ask me 20 years ago about my thoughts on trans people, I would have said, oh, it's what's on the outside that counts. That was my quip. I was stupid, I was ignorant, and I was bigoted. And I learned. You know how I learned? I talked to trans people. And I started to realize there was something I didn't know. And new information changed my mind. I was like, oh, wow, I hadn't really thought of that. And I know trans people that knew they were, in the wrong body since they were kids. And I've known somebody that kind of really came to the realization that that's what's been bothering them all along, because society's rules and all of that forced him to suppress it, and didn't come out as trans until he was in his 50s. And I say he is a transgender male. Not all trans people are the same, just like all cisgender people aren't the same. But talk to them and find their experiences. And the one thing that they have in common is they don't think they're, trans. They know. And so if you look at the science of it, and you look at how brains develop and how fetuses develop, there's actual brain chemistry involved. And so it's not just a thought. The chemistry is there. The brain chemistry of a trans woman is the chemistry of a woman, of a cisgender woman. When they're born when they're formed in the fetus, the first thing that happens is the whole XY chromosome thing. But sometimes the body, the things change their mind halfway through the process. And so then it finishes, your brain comes last. And so you have a transgender genital, or you have your genitals are one thing and your brain is another. And that's what causes gender dysphoria. It's not like somebody just said, oh, I like pink, I'm going to be a girl. Anyway, I'm sorry that you have to live in that. I'm sorry that society sucks so bad that they have to determine that you have to live a certain life, and they're going to assault you if you don't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Rising Phoenix. I'm sorry on behalf of our country. I'm sorry you have to go through that. Why don't you scroll back and find out why, Teresa? It's because MAGA brought it up. Because you're liberal and you need to complain about something that doesn't matter. Well, first of all, it doesn't matter to you. It does matter to me. It does matter to me. It matters to the people that are getting abused, that are getting assaulted. I'm sorry that you think that only things that matter to you should matter to anybody. I'm sure you don't think you're self-centered, though. And if it doesn't matter to you, then why are you so against it? Don't be a coward, Josh. Have the courage to allow people to be different. That's such a cowardly thing to say. You're a coward. You're a little chicken. Nobody cares. This isn't a thing. This is not a political issue. It's a spiritual illness, says the person who is speaking on behalf of God now. In your opinion, it's an illness. So that's why you're afraid of it, because somebody dared to have a different religious viewpoint than you. You're not here to trade insults. You're just here to judge, like the Almighty God himself or herself or itself. God is indeed non-binary. And I know this. God does not have genitals. Argentina wins 2-1 over England. Oh, sorry, Harry. You're not here. I bet you're drinking a pint right now. The point is, you don't control people's spirituality. Why don't you just worry about everything that goes to the end of your nose? It's like these people, they think that they don't understand that their particular religious viewpoint, which isn't even biblically based, by the way, has to be imprinted on everything and everybody. And if somebody else doesn't abide by their religion, then somehow that is a violation of their freedom. Name something other than Bill Clinton that was great about Arkansas in 250 years. You got me stumped. Your outspoken behavior is coming from an inner fear. If you see something in the bathroom you don't like, just walk. Keep going. I don't think you're in danger. That's why I say just have a coward's bathroom. I mean, rather than just have like a coward, and maybe instead of like the male and the female thing, you could just have like a little chicken sign on there. So, like for the MAGAs that are illiterate, they can just go and use the bathroom with the little chicken on it. I like that idea. The third bathroom should be a chicken bathroom, and all the little chickens can go in there and they can cluck themselves. Yeah, see, now it just gets into this kind of thing where you're not as smart as you think you are. He's yelling at Brett because Brett said something objectively true. So now it's Brett's not as smart as they won't refute objective facts. They just say things like, you're lying, you're not as smart. They just go for ad hominem attacks. You cannot. I have tried so hard. I am not lying when I say I've tried. I'm not exaggerating at all. I'm actually lowballing it when I say I've probably tried 10,000 different conversations with MAGAs, and I've had maybe 2 where they would actually have an honest conversation. Fascism is literally corporate control of the government. It's actually not literally that. I think that's been oversold. The idea is that Mussolini said something that fascism is better called corporatism. But it's actually the fascist government is not fascism in corporations. It's not so much the issue of corporations control the government. It's that the governments control the corporations, like Trump is doing. They don't own the companies. They just tell the companies what they have to do. Oh, you can't lower prices because I raised tariffs. You just have to eat the loss. That's fascism. You can't say bad things about me. That's fascism. Or you'll lose your FCC license. That's fascism. Lower your gas prices, even though you're losing money on it. That's fascism. It's telling the corporate world what to do and then using your control over the corporate world to control the economy. Kelly, we can stop talking about people in bathrooms. Texas can't handle it. Or TLXX 575. Whatever. I don't know. What kind of weird name is that? Kelly, I reported each letter in order so that it hits YouTube guidelines, community, one letter at a time. I love that awesomeness. He's referring to the guy that has now a couple of times gone through. He's come back. He got blocked, and then he came back and did it again. Comes in and types in the N-word one letter at a time, like he's being cute. But yeah. I'm just being hateful by calling him a racist. You weren't timed out. You just ran away. Bill Clinton triangulating policy for seeking corporate money kickstarted the trend with Democrats. I don't think Democrats are perfect. I don't think that the Democrats are as bad as the Republicans. I think one thing that maybe we can find common ground on to agree on here is we seriously need campaign finance reform. Right now, like so much of the money in politics is like 90. What is it? I heard like 90% is from corporation, and now it got even worse with this new Supreme Court hearing that came like a week or two ago. I forget how long. Because now, before it was like you had to donate money to the. It gives the party more control over how money can be distributed. So now you can just donate obscene amounts of money to the Republican or Democratic Party, and then the Democratic Party can decide who to donate that to. And so now it actually, for people that like primary challenges and stuff like that, and think that those things are a good thing because it limits party control over who can run. Well, now that just got worse. Now both parties can pick their candidates instead of having candidates picked by the voters. Trump is the greatest. What did Trump do? Kathleen, can you tell me what Trump did that's better than freeing the slaves? Name one thing he's done that's better than freeing the slaves. Greatest at what? Pooping? You misspelled worst. Your message went nowhere. The Chevron doctrine was a landmark legal principle that required federal courts to defer government's agencies' reasonable interpretation of ambiguous laws. Yes. And they said, they told Congress basically, if you want it to be more clear, you have to be more clear. Otherwise, the executive branch can decide what to do with it. An example of the Chevron doctrine that had nothing to do with the Chevron doctrine that might be able to help actually has to do with asylum laws. There are conditions under which somebody can accept asylum or claim asylum, right? I think it's based on sex, religion, sexual orientation, ideology, like political persecution, and belonging to a social group. And the belonging to a social group thing is kind of vague. And so what happened, Clinton was the first one to say, when you had the asylum seekers coming from Central America, that were being persecuted because they didn't belong to a gang, right? So the cartels would persecute people and murder people that wouldn't join the gang. And so they would try to force people to join that way. And so then they would come here and they would flee and they'd ask for asylum. And so then, you know, like they were getting killed. That's not like a hypothetical situation. They were, you know, really getting killed. And this started under Clinton. And so Clinton said, we are going to include that as part of a social group. It's technically not being part of a social group, but it's the same meaning, right? And so he started giving people asylum that did that. Bush continued that. Obama continued that. Trump didn't continue that. He said, no, that doesn't count. And he stopped letting asylum requests go based on that criteria. And agree with it or disagree with it, whichever side of that you're on, that was part of the Chevron doctrine. Since Congress did not say what that meant, the executive branch was free to interpret that however they wanted. And so you had, you know, some presidents interpreted it one way, another president interpreted it another way, but the actual context, the actual language in the bill was vague, and so they both interpreted it differently. And that's what the Chevron doctrine was. Now the Supreme Court in this new decision says, no, we get to decide what it meant. Congress doesn't say, the president doesn't say, we say, which is kind of a really, really just insane ruling, you know, that takes away both the legislative and executive power and just assumes the judicial branch has it now. Who gets to decide who the expert is? Well, the executive does, the president. The president decides who the executives are or who the experts are. But they should be actual experts. I'm not talking about some sort of semantic discussion of what experts mean. There are people that are experts. It's not a abstract thing, right? I don't care if you're talking, if I'm not going to take my car to a guy that says that, you know, the best thing to do for your car is put potatoes in the gas tank. And the expertise is a real thing. Actually knowing things, whatever you do for a living, Josh, I don't know what you do for a living. I'm pretty sure you know more about that thing than most people. It doesn't even matter what you do. I worked for a while as a painter. Worked my way through college, partly doing painting houses. I had a friend that painted houses. He taught me how to paint. And I can walk into a house and like almost automatically tell you whether or not that was painted by somebody that knew how to paint houses or not. Because when you learn to paint professionally, you learn how to paint right, and you learn how to recognize when you're not painting right, and why right makes right. Like there's a right way to use a roller, there's a right way to use a brush, there's a right way to cut a trim, right? And you can tell right away whether or not somebody did it right. There's experts in everything. And some things actually require more learning to do than others. Expertise is a real thing. And this diminishing of expertise is one of the weirdest things about Republicans. Or not even Republicans, MAGAs. Republicans respect expertise. MAGAs don't. I don't know why. I forgot. Kelly, I forgot. Did you see that during the G7 summit that Donnie stated that he nuked Iran? I did not see that. Does he really believe that? Is he that demented? Did his people tell him? I did not see that. I'll have to look at that. He wants to use nukes so bad. He asked why can't we use nukes? And he wanted to nuke a hurricane one time. Why can't we just nuke it? So many questions. Nobody called them on. They probably have and didn't know it. P next to transgender people, I think you probably meant. I think, yeah. And if you didn't know it, What's the big deal, right? Like, it's not like the transgender women go into the bathroom, kick open all the stalls, and said, "I'm transgender and I'm here to pee." And then they sit down and then they do their business while everybody sits in horror, looking at their big 14-inch Johnson. The number one fear, Obama. Oh, yes, they were very afraid of Obama. They were so afraid of Obama, they ran and hid behind Trump. They would have a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks had I not hit them with the nuclear. He really believes, and hit them with the nuclear. Like, that is like such a, I hit them with the nuclear. What a weirdo. He's like weird and stupid and deranged. His brain is, yesterday I made this loaf of bread. It was so good. It was so soft. I told my wife, this bread is softer than Trump's brain. Free daycare, Jesus, no anarchy, couples working more, adding to the economy. Hell no, those bastards. I have no idea what all that's about. You do know that that the average income of Democrats is greater than the average income of Republicans, right? Like, liberals actually make more money than Republicans. Just and this one's going to really hurt your feelings. We pay more taxes. Did you know that? Did you know that? Anyway, sorry to hurt your feelings, but David. MAGA are afraid of themselves. Yeah, and that's you know what I thought of when I read that comment is Josh Hawley literally running away from the MAGAs. The MAGA on MAGA crime. That was a thing. In the UK, when you understand the threat, live it, see it, you will understand Trump assignment. Sure. You apparently seem to be doing fine. They won't talk to trans people. They'd rather be bigoted. They would. I think it's more that they talk to them online and in secret. Yeah. They hook up with them on Grindr, and they have, you know, I don't even want to see their Pornhub searches. True, Brett. Anybody can go Google trends and look up a phrase. Did you know that, by the way, that they had a thing? I don't. There was a thing that, like, now in Texas now you can't use, like, Pornhub is blocked. But a few years ago they had this thing that came out where it was like the most searched thing on Pornhub in different states. And like one of the most searched things in Texas was chicks with something that rhymes with chicks. Just an observation. It's just closeted guilt. They need to get over it and just do what they want. They won't have what they are. Hateful MAGA. Oh. So there's a trends.google.com. Interesting. I've never looked at that site. What is wrong with you seriously? What is wrong with you seriously like? Why do you have so much hate over people who voted for somebody that you don't like? I don't have hate for people that voted for somebody I don't like. Why do you have so much hate for the people you don't like that you voted for somebody that is an adjudicated rapist, who is a convicted felon, who committed treason? But somehow it's about me. Like, your whole thing comes down to you hate me. Another coward. Another, I'm the victim. I'm the victim. I don't know who you are, Fayetteville, but I didn't vote against Trump. I voted for Kamala Harris because Kamala Harris would have been a much better president. I'll type in the date of the RNC and look up any phrase. It will show you exactly on the map of the United States where the most people look for it. The aren't like Republican National Committee? Oh, I see. So you're saying if the oh, that's cool. I'm gonna have to play with that. I bet there we could find some interesting things there. This really don't get why you hate Donald Trump so much. He didn't secure the border. The border was always secure. There was never any invasion. He just denied people the human right of asylum. He took the fine wave that Obama slapped. He didn't have anything to do with that. And the fine was only $50. And it was, like, oh my goodness, 30 million people that didn't have health insurance had health insurance. Do you have anything other than MAGA talking points? You don't understand why I don't like Trump? You don't like, he has ICE agents murdering people on the city streets. He's killing people he's killed 230 people on the ocean with non-judicially. He started a war with Iran and killed hundreds of children. He calls me an enemy of the people. He's tried to make it illegal to disagree with him. He wants $350 million to fight communism inside the United States, and he's calling communism the Democrats. He wants the U.S. military to go out and fight Democrats. And you wonder why I don't like him. Maybe you should engage with reality for a bit there, Mr. Fayetteville. I'm pretty sure not all the rappers were singing songs about him. Nobody wants to be like Trump except for the weirdos. I guess you just changed everybody's mind. You just couldn't control yourself. You had to crash out and start name calling. I was actually letting you rock your crazy message. Kelly, I'm out in 35, that was 1634, 12 minutes ago, so 23, 25, so about 10 minutes. When I vote MAGA out, I'm going to break whole right arm doing it. I'm going to send those trolls back to the deepest part of the trailer park. Too much mistrust in the government, so they go to conspiracy theories. And it's like their government is the one we can't trust. It's so weird. MAGA doesn't seem to realize that Donald Trump was president in 2020. All the stuff they complain about from 2020, Donald Trump was president. Donald Trump was president when Joe Biden won the election. The only time Donald Trump lost an election was when he wasn't, or only time he lost an election was when he was president. I don't think MAGA ever even knew what they were. They're just scared people with guns. That's all they are. And everything, and it's actually the Republican Party has been the party of fear for a long time, but it's amped up now. They're afraid of more people. They're afraid of immigrants. They're afraid of transgender people. They're afraid of gay people. They're afraid of LGBTQ+. They're afraid of rainbow flags. They're afraid of books. They're afraid of knowledge. They're afraid of TV shows that have trans people on them. They're afraid. They're always afraid. They're afraid of Sharia law coming. They're afraid of Muslims. They're afraid of, the African invaders and South American invaders. They're afraid. They're just always afraid. Everything comes down to being afraid. And if you point out that they're a bunch of afraidos, then all of a sudden you're like hateful. Long Bong, how you doing today? MAGA doesn't understand most things. The more you know. A bunch of racist Peter Griffins and lifted pickup trucks. Peter Griffin is the character on one of the I think I know the reference. I don't watch it's a cartoon show, right? Like forget the name of it. David says you're wrong on all points and doesn't say anything about what point I'm specifically wrong on or why. And the thing about the toilets is that people can pretend to be trans to go into the ladies' room, and even if it's a tiny amount, they shouldn't be. Toilets should be single occupancy. Well, toilets are single occupancy. I've never seen more than one person on a toilet. And as I said before, there's nothing stopping cisgender men from going into the bathroom. They don't have to pretend that they're trans to do so. There's not like opening up the doors to assault women in bathrooms. If you let trans women go in, then all of a sudden all these trans women are going to put on wigs and go into the bathrooms and rape women. Like I said, it's such a dumb talking point. Like if they're going to go into a restroom to rape people, rape is already against the law. They're not going to be like, I'd go rape her, but you know, the bathroom rules keep me from doing so. I mean, like, dude, this is what I mean when I say you guys are ruled by fear. Well, if you do this, then all of a sudden all these rapist weirdo men are going to put on wigs and take advantage of it. And just the fact it could happen means we got to keep it from happening. Iran has been at war with the U.S. for 40. Iran has been blah, 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 blah. Iran has never carried out an attack on American soil. A lot more than, unless you count like the embassy or something, a lot more than hundreds of children if you include the ones in Gaza. Yeah, and the ones in Lebanon now. This idea that Iran has been at war, what a dumb talking point. We haven't been at war with Iran for 47 years. We've been at war with Iran since Donald Trump bombed Iran. Stop saying stupid things and pretending they're not stupid. So North Korea has been at war with us since 1950. Yes, good point. Thank you, Walter. I like Trump, but I'm not weird. It's the Democrats who are weird. Okay. That's a weird comment. This is like the MAGA, their number one retort is, I'm made of rubber, you're made of glue, bounces off me and sticks to you. They are the least creative group of people when it comes to insulting in the history of insulting people. I could insult Democrats if, you know, I so wanted, but I would at least come up with a creative insult. I say, like, for MAGAs, we should make it so that the lettering is backwards, so that they could read it when they look in the mirror and remind themselves that they're MAGAs, because they're so dumb they have to wear the MAGA hats so that they don't forget who they voted for. That was typed like you don't even speak English. Thank you, Mark. He says keep speaking the truth. Yet they aren't afraid of supporting a pedophile child murderer. Right, they're not afraid because they know that they're being protected, maybe. Trump is awesome. What's your problem? Every real American knows that. What is a real American? Like, I always wonder what you guys mean when you say real American. What is a real American? How are you more American than me? What makes you a real American and me what does that make me? A fake American? Notice that the radical violent left is the biggest threat to our great republic. Okay, the radical violent left is not the ones that had a mob descend on the Capitol building and prevent the peaceful transfer of power. That didn't happen in 2025. That happened in 2021. And that was a bunch of angry white people with carrying Confederate flags and white supremacists and the, you know, New Age Klan hats, called MAGA hats. If you don't know what our problem was, if you really want to know what our problem is, maybe you should try listening instead of asking stupid questions that I've already answered several times in this stream. I'm not afraid of anyone in bathrooms or eating cats, nor do I fear Iran. That weird comment could only come from the mind of MAGA and David Pruitt. If you're thinking that deep on this, it's clearly crushed your mind decades ago. We haven't been at war. We've been at war for 47 years, yet we only, Why weren't we at war with Iran from 1917 or from 2017 to 2020? When were we at war with Iran then? Because I'm pretty sure that we had like a treaty with them that Donald Trump broke. But maybe that's just me and my book learning again. All the experts and stuff saying expert stuff. Maggots think that Trump cares deeply for them, not the billions he's making. He told you what he thinks about you when he said, I love the inflation. YouTube keeps snagging the good comments. Stop doing that, YouTube. All they say is TDS. TDS is their fallback. They know what the leader tells them to know real good. Clean up the house. I haven't checked. I've got a don't know if that's what you meant, but the White House columns. I don't know what's going on with that. Shut up. No. How about having a balls to actually declare war? We have been at this since February. Well, he can't, because no senator would vote that we were going to war. They just decide to hide behind this resolution thing where they can not vote against the war and not vote for a war. There's a reason that the whole thing about voting to declare war is in the Constitution, and why it's got power given to Congress. Because Congress, if this is the whole idea, right? Congress has to go back and get and tell the people why they voted the way they voted. And generally speaking, people don't like being told to go off to war to die. Iran war is not popular among the American people. They don't want to go and defend that, but they don't want to offend King Trump. So they keep doing this little coward thing. I'm telling you. Got to think of a word for cowardly that starts with G. Do real Americans storm capitals before seeing any proof and then deny and gaslight and call it a peaceful protest? When conservatives say real Americans, it's just squawking of their rhetoric like lemmings. They are all brain dead. A real American is someone who believes in freedom from tyrants who target innocent immigrants just for being here and trying to live in a peaceful life with their families. Man, somebody... Oh, we got some viewers that don't like this idea of being told they're not real Americans. I love it. Some good comments here. Trump is so obsessed with Obama and Biden. He literally has to tear everything up and then rewrite it with his own name on it, except even that turns to poop. So like even the whole Trump care thing is like the liberals have been fighting for what the essence of what the whole Trump care thing is with the pharmacy and stuff. They've been fighting for that since 2008 when the Republicans voted it down. Now it's called Trump care and they're all behind it. Typical liberal, respect your president, Trump. I don't respect him. I get, did you respect Joe Biden? More importantly, did Donald Trump respect the president when Joe Biden was president? Did Donald Trump respect the president when Barack Obama was president? You say this like it should be like a thing that everybody assumes, right? But where's your respect for the president when it's not Donald Trump? I don't respect Donald Trump as a person. I tend to not have much respect for people that jam women in locker rooms or in dressing rooms up against the wall and then just jam their fingers into their vaginas. I don't respect that. I don't respect people who, do 6 pumps and dump into a porn star while his wife is breastfeeding his baby boy. And then later on pays her to keep quiet about it so that he can, cover up all the things and commit more felonies to just keep it from the American public before an election. I tend to not respect people that steal nuclear secrets and possibly sell them. What we never will know and what we do not know is what he actually sold before we had to get those secrets back. Go back and look it up. Look it up in 2021. There was this before we even knew he had those documents. There was this just kind of weird thing that was happening where all these secret agents and undercover operatives around the world were just like disappearing and getting killed, and there was no link. We couldn't figure out how it was happening, and it was just a pattern that was raising concerns, and everybody's like, how is that happening? How, why are we, within the CIA, they were concerned about these things. We didn't even know that Donald Trump had all that information, but we knew that all these identities were that were classified were people that were dying. You think there might be a connection there? No, I don't respect people that sell national secrets. To what an extent are American financial straits motivating you to make a deal? I don't think about it, not even a little bit. Like, he doesn't have to pay for gas. We pay for his gas. Have you ever had Five Guys wieners or just their burgers? Just their burgers. They're okay. I honestly, I make better burgers than any burger that I've bought. Respect is earned. He's got a negative balance. He's bankrupt there too. The champion of bankruptcy. War is meant for militaries to fight each other, not for militaries to target and bomb little kids. I was thinking about this, Catherine. I was just recently, I was thinking about, I was doing some stuff on George Washington, and the Whiskey Rebellion was actually the first time that we as the United States of America, activated our military. And there was like the taxes were too high, and so there was this insurrection that started. And George Washington didn't just call in the troops; he actually rode at the front of the troops. He led. He brought back General Washington that won the revolution, and he led the forces into battle. Well, except that the insurrectionists said disbanded before he got there, but he was ready to do that. Can you imagine if that were still the case? And I don't just talk about with Trump, I'm talking about with everybody. Imagine if the president actually still led the troops into battle. I bet we would have a lot less wars. We talk about, oh yeah, send your kids into war. How about we just have the president lead people into battle? I bet we'd have a lot less wars if the president's ass was on the line. War is meant to kill poor people. Rich people don't go to war. They just tell poor people to go for them. Exactly. I didn't even read that comment until after I said that. But I bet if the president had to go to war, we'd have some serious changes about priorities of when to use the military and how. Bone spurs times 5, suckers and losers. And then he was going to, I think one of his kids, maybe Don Jr., was saying he wanted to join the military, and Donald Trump said he'd disown him if he did it. I have money issues. Everybody has money issues, except for, Donald Trump's administration and Elon Musk. Look what he called John McCain. We knew he was a rapist and felon before he was elected to office a second time. And the Supreme Court backs up this rapist title. Yep. He paid her. He had to pay her. Sorry, buddy. Supreme Court said, no, we're not even going to hear that case. That's pathetic. Sit down, rapist. Trump bragged to the American people about taking out the leader of Iran without mentioning the part about slaughtering his family, including his 14-month-old granddaughter at the same time. I didn't know about that. I'm not surprised to hear about it. Once Trump does something worth respecting, I'll respect him. The one thing I will say about Trump that he got right was Operation Warp Speed. I don't think it was his idea, but at least he didn't stop it. And he did it out of self-interest because he was hoping that if we got the vaccines back, that would help him in the election. But at least he didn't stop it. So basically never. Exactly. They should make world leaders get an octagon, do their own fighting. Hey, there's an idea. I bet the prime minister of Italy would have kicked his ass after that meme. What will you get MAGA losers do with your miserable lives when Trump is gone? Please don't use the word maggot. I don't appreciate dehumanizing language, even if it's for Trump supporters. Sorry. In about 48 hours, when the crack price of oil goes up, they'll find out it's already at a record high. What do you mean the crack price of oil? What is? I know that. Now it's up. It's back up. It's gone up about another $5. Brent crude's back up to 85. Yeah, it's definitely ticking back up. But that's the overall future. What is? I don't know what the crack price. I heard that expression before. When he is gone, they all move to Montana. Okay. When he is gone, they all move to Montana or Idaho. I think I actually, it's going to be harder to, in 10 years, you won't find a Trump supporter any more than you can find a guy that voted for Bush right now. Nobody voted for Bush. Nobody wants to admit they voted for Bush. And in 10 years, you won't be able to find anybody that voted for Trump. The economy is going to be just continually get worse for the next 3 years. And by the time he's gone, the Democrats are going to win in a landslide, and you'll never find anybody that was ever a MAGA. They'll just talk about the, oh, yeah, I can't believe those MAGAs. And it's like, but Dad, you were one. Shh. We're not talking about that. I enjoyed the Lego videos from Iran. They gave us more facts than our own president. And they were funny. I suspect that whoever was doing that went to college in America and kind of really had a good finger on the pulse of American culture, because they got the humor right, which is like that's hard to do, to get the humor of another country right. That was actually, that was pretty smart. Iran is a very well-educated country. I don't think maybe a lot of people realize that. So anyway, I think that we're good here. I think that does it for today. We're almost at 3 hours. I hope you guys have a lovely evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Oh, and if you haven't liked and subscribed yet, go ahead and do that for me. Thanks.